why God chooses to to experience through us all these negativities, wars, crimes, rapes, so all these negative. Why God want to?
I mean, this is the number one question, right? Right? Because what I just said, love is the underlying reality of war, right? That doesn't make sense to an ego. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. That does not satisfy the egoic mind, and I understand that. I totally understand that. God, he has. Let's step all the way back to the beginning of the understanding of the non-dual message. That there's only this one substance of consciousness or awareness, right? It's totality. It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, or an end. It's never been born, and therefore it'll never die. Okay, but it knows its own being. It knows itself. But the infinite can only know the infinite directly. Okay? The infinite cannot directly know the finite. And the finite can only know the finite directly. It can't know the infinite. Well, our being, or God, it wants to see itself in its own glory. But it can't see itself in a finite experience. Okay? So it has to collapse itself down somehow. It's the infinite collapsing itself down into the finite that we experience as the world. So you could say that the world, all of this objective reality, is collapsed consciousness's activity. Does that make sense? And and we are that prism. I mean, you could say that this infinite realm is out here, and our five senses are the prism in which the finite can see, in which the infinite can see the finite of itself. We are that. Our self is that. Our being is that prism. But, and here's where we get to answering your question. When it allows itself to contract or collapse, it loses control of itself. To be able to see something other than itself, and because it's all knowing, it has to forget itself somehow. Because it's all knowing. It loves the fact that it doesn't really know what's going on here in this world. Because it wants to be surprised too, you could say. And if it didn't forget itself, which is itself also, part of the paradox, the forgetting is also itself. If it couldn't forget itself, it would already know the outcome to this. And what it's trying to do here is answer the same question you and I are trying to answer on this call right now. The question, who am I? This is God. This objective world is God answering his own question, who am I? So when we turn within and answer that question, we are helping God in answering his question. But when it forgets, it also forgets the love of itself. And when it forgets the love of itself, hate comes into play. There's like a sacrifice. It gives up a piece of itself to experience itself in a finite experience of the world, of the universe.
So that's why they say every crime is perfect. But some do not use the word perfect because it doesn't go with the mind. They say it is okay. Because God is doing all that to get the experience of opposites. So whatever is happening in the world is perfect, is okay.
You could say perfect. You could say it's whole. That might be a better term. But perfect.
But you are saying love. It is love. You are saying love.
It's love. Yes, it's love expressing itself as hate because love has forgotten the totality of the love of itself. Remember, we're always aware. We're permanently aware. Even as egos, we always have a tether back to the love of ourself. Even if we're running around the world, in this objective world, thinking that this world is real, we are always aware. That's the tether back to the infiniteness of ourself. That's why there's always, the ego has two parts. It has a real part, which is awareness, and then it adds all these adjuncts to itself. I'm a man, I'm a biker, I'm an engineer, I'm a physicist. When it adds things onto itself, it creates an ego. But the ego always has a real piece, which is awareness. That's why we always have a tether back home to ourselves. And then it cloaks that with our adjuncts, with everything we've added to ourselves. And when it does this, it forgets the love of itself, and it has the ability to then go around and do hateful and harmful things. So when you take this off, you lose the ability to hate and harm, because self doesn't have any idea what that is. So to experience its own glory in a finite realm that we're experiencing here, it has to go through some sacrifice to do that. Because everything is still possible. Everything still needs to be possible. And that's what we see in this world. We see anywhere from love to horrible, horrible things. But
it's all love.
But the underlying reality of it all is love.
Yeah.
It's consciousness's activity.
Yeah.
It never separates itself from itself. Because it doesn't have borders. It never came into play. It never came into creation. It never came out of non-existence. It never came out of non-existence to exist. That would be duality. It's always been. And therefore it can't separate itself from itself. Because anywhere it looks, it only finds more of itself. It can't step outside of itself, and it can't pull itself apart to find a gap of itself, because there's only more of itself. That's why there's only all of this so-called negativity in the world only has the underlying reality of consciousness, of love. And you experience that the more you turn within. The quick answer to that question, because that gets brought up a lot, how come there's hate and war? Well, you really want to know the answer? Know yourself. It will answer everything. Remember, it takes all of the burden off of you. It carries everything. You know exactly why everything is happening. And when you do peer back out into the world and you see people suffering, all you long for is for them to know their self, to experience happiness and love and peace. It's just love turning. It's just this cycle of love.